Mike
Do you like
McAllister
cheese on
joins.
your apple pie?
No. I do like broccoli cheese soup.
Cheddar cheese on apple pie, not bad.
Yeah. I don't need to jazz up the apple pie. Apple pie is good enough for me. Mike's joining us now. Mike, how are you? How was the weekend?
It was good. How was yours?
It was nice. It was nice. I was telling Paulie, Luke celebrated. You know, he had his birthday Friday. JP's got his birthday today, so it's been a busy weekend for the Infante boys. But no, all is well. Back to work here, and we're talking football. And I don't know, how much you listened to the earlier part of the show, but Jordan posed a question to us on our rundown today. He said, what kind of odds would you place on Syracuse football making the college football playoff before Fran Brown leaves? And I said that I think it's wild, but I kind of put it at 50-50 or maybe a smidge ahead of 50-50. Well, what kind of percentage would you give the Orange to make the playoff before Fran leaves?
I had it at 35.
Yeah, I maybe say like 40-60, like 40 he willed. I'll kind of split the difference between you guys, but it's crazy that we're even talking about it in those type of odds. If you had said this, 2-3 years ago, I think people would have thought you were crazy if you put those kind of odds on Syracuse making the playoffs. But, that's the world we live in with the expanded playoff, with the ACC champ getting an auto bid into the playoff. And that's, I think, Syracuse's best path to making it, even though, they might have had an argument last year if a couple of plays had gone a different way. Perhaps they're in regardless of winning the ACC, or at least in the discussion. So I can see a path to making it without the ACC championship, but I think that's probably Syracuse's best chance. And part of it is schedule. Is determined by your schedule. Which teams do you play in conference? If you don't have to play Clemson, Florida State, or Louisville in your conference schedule, if you can try to avoid, a couple of those teams and you don't have to play them until you get to the conference championship game, that would certainly help. And if you didn't have a non-conference schedule that included the likes of Notre Dame and Tennessee, that would be helpful as well. But, yeah, with the talent that they're acquiring, with the play that we saw last year as an example, I don't think it's completely ridiculous to be talking about that.
Yeah, it's the fact that we are all 35% or higher, as you said, Mike. It's wild that go back 5 years ago, people would have laughed at you if you said that, and we all believe it. And I think that is, I think the answer is somewhere around there, which is again crazy that we're even talking in those terms. All right, let's talk some recruiting. And we saw last week there was a big offensive lineman, both literally and figuratively, flipped from Penn State, Roseby Labintus. Tell us, I guess, about this particular young man, and is there any sort of insight into what led to him decommitting from Penn State and coming to Syracuse?
Well, as far as the player, he kind of fits the mold of what Fran Brown likes in the offensive line, which is ridiculous measurables. He's 6'5", 6'6", and he's anywhere from 350 to 370. We know what Byron Washington was a couple cycles ago. We know that the guys they brought in all seem to be, in the 6'5", 6'7" range for tackles, and 300 plus all over the line. So he fits that mold. Really highly touted guy, and what he took an official visit to Syracuse in April. And then shortly after that, he commits to Penn State. And from talking to him, what he said was he felt like he rushed that decision and kind of just committed to a brand. And the more that he took a step back and thought about things and thought about his options, the more that he realized that wasn't necessarily where he thought the best fit for him was just committing to a brand as opposed to the school with the coaches and everything else to ultimately make him the most successful at the collegiate level. So he, knowing that, having that in his background, he continued to talk to the Syracuse coaches, and ultimately they were able to convince him to flip his commitment. So definitely a big recruiting win for Syracuse.
We heard Fran last year say big people beat up on little people, and that he wanted to get bigger on both sides of the line, offensive line, defensive line. And that's a departure from Dino's philosophy when he was here, right? Was that he wanted athletic offensive linemen that could move and were able to be quick off the line of scrimmage, opposed to necessarily being big. Have you seen that shift, Mike, in the recruiting? I mean, you've been following this through Dino's era, into Fran Brown now. Are you seeing a vast difference in terms of the type of offensive linemen and defensive linemen that are being recruited now?
Absolutely. And now let's start by saying this. The guys that Dino recruited may have been small by typical D1 power conference line standards, but not necessarily by general population standards, right?
Sure, right.
A guy that's 6'3", 280 is still pretty big when you walk up to him. But in terms of what Dino was recruiting, he wanted that quickness and that agility and that and all of that on both lines of scrimmage that worked well for the 3-3-5. And then offensively, he wanted that so that they could run tempo, figuring that the quicker guys they had, the more mobile guys they had, it allowed them to run their up-tempo offense a bit better. So that's what he was looking for. With Fran, as you guys have said numerous times since he's taken over, his philosophy is big guys move small guys, and his philosophy is faster guys run by slower guys. And you've seen him recruit that way. That's why his defensive backs all seem to have track backgrounds, and it's why his offensive linemen all have those measurables, and defensive linemen as well. They're recruiting guys along the interior that are 300-plus pounds already out of high school. And, some of the guys they bring in through the transfer portal are 6'3", 320, those type of guys that they're plugging into the middle of the defensive line. So, yes, there's absolutely been a shift in what they're looking for. And you can see that with who they're targeting, who they go after, and who they get committed.
It's a great segue into the next guy I wanted to talk to you about. That's a three-star athlete, in quotes, Cameron Hairston Taylor, being brought here as an athlete. I guess most likely would play defensive back. But you talk about fast guys. He's a track star, right? He's a state champion sprinter, state champion long jumper, in addition to being a really good football player. What does Cameron Hairston Taylor bring to the table for this team?
Yeah, he's gonna go into the secondary. He's gonna be someone that can play in the slot a little bit as a slot corner, but also has the versatility to bounce outside and be a field corner as well. But just really good, really talented player. His older brother was a former 4-star prospect who signed with Penn State, who ended up having to go the junior college route, but just tells you the level of talent that's in the bloodlines. And he had several power conference offers, picked Syracuse, and is going to fit into that secondary. And like you said, fits the mold of what Syracuse is looking for. They want the longer guys that are 6 feet plus at all levels of their secondary, and another guy that can really run. That's exactly what they're looking for. He fits the mold. Came up and took an official visit. Also took official visits to Virginia Tech and Appalachian State, and ultimately picked Syracuse. So, again, their momentum on the recruiting trail continues with some big commitments in the recent week and a half, 2 weeks.
We saw Calvin Russell make the claim that his recruitment was over after he committed to Syracuse and said, I'm done, that's where I'm going, even though he can't technically sign until December. We recently saw it with a Florida State linebacker, the 2026 commit, who said, I'm done, I'm going to Florida State, recruitment is over. Do you think as things move along here, do you think we will see these an introduction of these big NIL deals to high school players and multi-year deals to high school players? And there's a report from On3 that Russell's getting a multi-year deal here at Syracuse. Do you think that this will be more the norm and that we won't see as many guys flip at the last second because they're locked into a multi-year deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But here's the caveat to all of this: is the NIL deals, from my understanding, is they can't be tied to pay for play. Like you're paying an NIL contract in what you're giving them in return is guaranteeing you're going to go to a certain school. Now, I think they can put language in there like attending a school in the greater central New York area or something like that kind of gets around those type of requirements. But what I'm wondering is going to happen, yes, I think that will become more normal, but I also think what's going to happen at some point is there's going to be someone who signs a NIL deal out of high school, starts getting paid from that school, gets several months or perhaps even up to a year's worth of NIL payments that was done in connection with committing to a certain school. And then another school comes in late before signing day and throws more money at them or gives them a better deal or whatever the case is. And then that person ends up flipping and signing with the other school. And then does the original school's NIL collective go back and try to sue him for that money that he's already collected? I'm wondering if that's going to happen at some point in the future. So I think there's a lot of variables to that, a lot of potential messiness to that. But yes, ultimately, I think the goal is multi-year contracts, which help minimize transfers and also help minimize flipping towards the end of a recruiting cycle.
All right, one basketball question before we let you go. We're seeing that Syracuse is in the mix for a couple of highly touted guys out of the class of 2026, a point guard, Duran Rippey, and a small forward, Vaughn Carvala. I hope I'm saying their names right. What can you tell us about these guys? What kind of chances do you think Adrian Autry has of landing them? What other schools are in the mix for these guys?
Yeah, Syracuse has been involved with both of those schools for quite a while, or both of those players, I should say, for quite a while, which is the good thing is when you can get in early. Rippey is going to be tough. I mean, he's got a bunch of schools after him from the Kentuckys of the world and those types that he's North Carolina, et cetera. He's going to be taking official visits to several schools. Carvala, I think they've got I would say maybe a slightly better chance. But again, he's got Alabama's pretty hard after him right now. They're trying to get an official visit scheduled. He's got schools like Missouri. He's originally from Wisconsin. Wisconsin's after him. So Syracuse certainly has competition for both players, but the fact that you can get him on campus and Syracuse has a good start to the season and, you get them on campus early and make an impression and then have a good start to the season, then I think that'll go a long way towards how those guys feel about Syracuse and its future. All
right, Mike. Great stuff. Great insight as always. We appreciate you coming on. Enjoy the week.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Mike McAllister joining us here on the show. We'll hit a timeout here. We will get to Lee Baldwin and company coming up on the other side. And then hour number 2, we've got Aaron Solomon coming your way at 1:30. We'll ask him about the multi-year contracts and if that will become the norm in his opinion as things move along. We'll wrap up hour number 1 next on ESPN Radio.